Hello everyone, welcome to episode 70 of Reconstructing Cave Story. Today we're going to be fixing the bounce collisions that we made pretty obvious in the last episode. I made a little drawing to help us out, and just to warn you, it's pretty janky, so don't expect too much from that. But in the last episode, what we did is we broke it down so that you could press in to click to the next frame. You could really see what was going down in slow motion, a single frame at a time. We also made sure that the frames were all the same time length, so that when we came to this problem, we could reproduce it consistently. And so this is the problem we're getting to, and this is the way. So this is because of the order that we're checking slopes. So what we'll do is we'll check the slope that is directly beneath the center of our map collidable, which in this case is our Dorito, and we ignore all other collisions once we find a collision in that direction. So what's going on, and I'm going to show you with my janky drawing. Here we have our, let's say our Dorito, it's just a collision rectangle. This is the center, and I just drew a line down from the center, just so we know where that is. So we can see that it's straight above and it's drawing over, which kind of sucks, but I don't really know paint that well. But it's going straight above our slope. So what's going to happen is we will collide with our slope. Let me see if I can. I'm going to just bring down part of it. So we'll collide with our slope, and instead of colliding with the green box as our first collision, we'll collide with it as our second collision. So we'll collide with our slope, which will push us to the top of the slope, which is not enough to get us out of the collision range for a secondary collision with this green box. So we're going to be pushed all the way down as a secondary collision. And that's obviously not what we want, because then we'll have Doritos flying everywhere, and quote won't be able to ever get any Doritos because they'll just all be falling between the gaps of the slope and the tiles. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a different type of collision for slopes, for bouncing, or no, sorry, not for slopes, but for Doritos, for bouncing entities, for things that aren't walking, for things that don't need this sticky, like, hey, stick to the slope until, because what we're doing is we're ignoring collisions for the player with this this secondary collision with the wall tile, because otherwise you'll get weird things where you can't walk all the way up the slope, or it's jumpy or stuff like that. So we're going to need a separate collision, and there's no escaping it. It's just inherent in the complexity of things. So that's what we're going to be doing in this episode, is we're going to be making sure that our, specifically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making sure that our Dorito hits the first thing that it touches. So rather than looking at just the center, we're going to see what's the furthest out in the opposite direction of motion. So we're going to see that this right here is the furthest out in the opposite motion of this area is the furthest out in the opposite motion of direction, in the opposite direction of motion. So that's what we're going to be doing in this episode. It's really pretty simple, but we're also going to do a little bit of cleanup from our last episode, where we were drawing all this extra stuff to the screen. Maybe we'll move it into another function or something so that we can turn it off and on later. But yeah, so let's just get started. All right, so let's jump into our map collidable, because that's where I'm going to fix it. We could fix this also in, okay, let's see. I'm going to show you where we could fix it, but where I'm not going to yet until I want to optimize things later. Map CC. So we could fix it in here where we are not creating the test map, but getting colliding tiles. So this is where we decide that we are going to favor the center, and then we return them all. It's fine. I think we might be able to fix it some way there, but that's just not the way I decided to fix it. In here in map collidable CC, instead, when we're testing our map collision, we're going to have two of these test map collisions, one for walking and one for bouncing. The walking one will do this thing where we are See how we're inside of this for loop and we're testing all the tiles and we return an info as soon as we've collided? What we're going to do instead is we're going to keep track of which one is the furthest out. And at the end, once we've seen all the tiles and seen which of the 8 is the furthest out, or however many there were, I can't remember if it was 8. It's about 8 though. We'll return that info, or none if there was none. So we're just going to break this out into 2 functions. For now, we'll call one of them test walking, test map walking collision. That will be the old one. And the new one we'll call test map bouncing collision. Actually, let's call this one sticky collision. That's the convention I've been using. All right, so here we go. We're gonna get rid of this else if maybe ground tile. We probably won't use the ground tile. I'll leave it in as a parameter just to make things consistent, and it'll be easier that way. So, but we're not gonna need this case where we're testing maybe ground tile at all, because that's where we were doing slope stuff. We're not doing slope stuff. Now we're going to want to keep track of our return value. So let's call this result. It'll default to boost none, so that's what we'll return. Return the result instead of boost none. And then our for loop is going to now test to see if this new collision, if this new test info is actually further out in the direction of, opposite direction of motion, which is the direction of side. So we have that saved out here. So we're going to test to see if it's further out than our running result. And if it is, then we'll reset the results. And if not, then we'll just keep going. So we'll do all this if test info is colliding. So if it is colliding, first of all, we need to see if there is, I'm going to make a bool for this. So should replace results equals true. So if there is a result already, then we need to do the test to see if, let's see, should replace result. We're going to replace the result. And I don't know if you guys remember, we had this sides, min side is min or is max. So if we're a min side, that means we'll need to either check less than. So let's see, min is either, let's just do one case. So left side, let's start with the left side. So we should replace the result if the side, this is the side that is getting collided with, the side of the slope that's getting collided with. If the side is left side, and sorry, and our test info dot position is greater than. So if we're colliding with the left side, no, less than. So we want to see if this is further left, if this test info dot position is further left, then we need to replace the result. So result position. But really we can do this for the left side or the top side. And I had this encoded in a side is min. So sides is min side, and we can do that instead of checking to see if it's the left side, because the left side is a mid side. So if the sides is min, we're going to do this test. Otherwise, we'll do the opposite test. And remember, we got to make sure that the result actually exists before we do this. But if it doesn't exist, we're going to fill it. And if it does exist, then we'll replace it. So we'll make our collision info. We already have that. So let's, instead of returning it, let's set result equal to it. Oops. I've been learning Emacs. So forgive me if I make some pretty stupid errors with typing. All right, so I'm just going to build this. We aren't using it yet, but we're going to need to know where to replace things. We no longer have this test map collision, so let's test map sticky collision. We'll just do sticky for now. And just make sure that this still does the same thing, play, and we're still getting caught, which is great. All right, so now we need to know whether to use our test map sticky collision or our bouncing collision. And to do that, I'm going to add another field to our map collidable and just take that in the constructor so that we know which bouncing or, H file's up here, map collidable.h, bouncing or sticky. So I'll make an enum for collision type. I could probably do this as a bool. I don't know if I'm gonna have other types of collision though. So I'm just gonna leave this as an enum because I don't know, maybe there's more types of collisions, but we'll do enum for now. So this will be collision type. And this is either going to be bouncing collision or sticky collision. Shoot. More Emacs. And then let's take in a constructor so that we can initialize a private member data. Let's create that private member data. Collision type. Collision type. Spelling. All right. Let's see, up here we'll create a constructor and it'll take in a collision type and fill in our collision type. And that's all it's going to do. We should get compile errors now. That'll tell us exactly where we need to, so map collidable, no appropriate default constructor available. Let's go to our player CC and call its constructor, call the map collidable constructor, as well as our PowerDorito pickup.cc and do the same there. So let's start with PowerDorito pickup.cc. We'll call map collidable. We just need to tell it that we want to use a bouncing collision and do the same kind of thing in player except use sticky collision. So map collidable, sticky collision. All right, so this should build 100%. Don't even need to check, I don't think. But let's go back to map collidable.cc and actually determine which test we want to use. So I'm going to type def this test. So that we can talk about the type of it. Collision, map collision test. Func. And it returns an optional collision info. and returns all that stuff. Right, so this way we can talk about our map collision func inside of here, store a pointer to it, map collision func. And we'll want to make this a pointer. I think I was doing pointers this way. I've changed my style so much. Styles, I have very little to say about style, code style. I worked for a little bit on Google Chrome, and they are very, very serious about their style. And I think it's important to have similar style when you're working on large projects, but when you're working by yourself, style just doesn't matter that much. I mean, that's just what I think. Just do whatever you feel like. That's all that really counts. But I think this is what I've been doing, and I'm trying to keep consistent for you guys. But again, it doesn't really matter to me. Test map collision. So this is either going to be our test map sticky collision. So if our collision type is equal to bouncing collision, we'll want to use test map bouncing collision. Otherwise, we'll use test map sticky collision. And let's make sure to call with this new variable instead of these old clunky hard-coded stuff things. And this way, we don't have to say the name twice and introduce bugs later on. It's just a way to stay dry. Don't repeat yourself. It's just a nice little acronym, cute acronym. Okay, build errors. So let's see what the build errors were. Collision info undeclared identifier. Oh, well that's because I defined it right beneath it. So let's do that. So it should still go. I don't know if, look, it bounced right over it. I don't know if there are any bugs though. That's not a very good indicator of whether there are any bugs, because I intentionally left a bug in where I'm always replacing the result. So let's see what happens when we get closer. Huh. All right. Well, so the problem, I left this in on purpose because I wasn't sure if it would cause a bug, but so you know what? Actually, let's just keep testing it and see if we can get it to show up. All right. So to test it, let's go into GameCC, and I'm going to have it just play by itself. I don't want to have to hold P to play it, so I'm going to make a static bool should play. That's going to be equal to true, and this will be should play. There I go again, should play. That's what I've been doing. Doesn't matter. Again, doesn't matter. Should play, if it should play or the key was pressed, actually it does make it a lot easier. So I will say something about style. If you keep a consistent style, it makes it easier to do find or replace. And especially, that's a nice tool to use when you're working by yourself. So I will say, I will give it that. Keep a consistent style to make grepping and finding and replacing a lot easier. So if should play or input was key pressed, and should play if input was key pressed SDLK. So now I'm just making it so that if the P key was pressed, then we just say pause or play. So it's more of a pause button now instead of a hold to play. should play equals not should play. Again, like all sorts of ways you guys can control time. It's pretty fun. So now you see it's playing. I can pause, play, cool. So now let's throw in some more pickups. Let's put our for loop in. For int I equals 0, I is less than, let's do 10 plus plus I. I'm actually going to start out pause too, just so that we can look at that. Cool. So we see a bunch coming out. They all seem to be bouncing just fine, but I'm always replacing the result. It shouldn't be, so what should be failing if I'm always replacing the result? That means that it's always going to be the last thing it checked, even if it's always going to be the last thing that it checks, even if it's further out. So I'm going to fix this bug without knowing why without it failing, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying here is we should really only be replacing the result if we've gone through this and we've said, oh, it's further out, or it's the first one. So if there is one, then if there isn't one, this case will never go through, and it will know it's the first one. So we should be setting result equal to info. Yeah, let's see what happens. Well, it's still working, so I don't know whether to worry about this too much. I might test it more on my own later, but I don't want to waste too much of your guys' time. But let's have some fun with this. Since we can see how many, let's add like 500 Doritos and see what this looks like, just for fun, you know, just to see. Whoa. Okay, that's really slow. Okay, so this is like really slowing down. This might be because it's probably because I'm recording too. That really slows things down, but you can get, well, the numbers work out pretty well. You can get into the thousands of experience without any bugs there, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, they're all gone now. And I guess we're freeing memory correctly because or something, I don't know, processing it better. But yeah, we'll work on optimization towards the end, because you don't want to optimize at the beginning because you don't know the whole layout of how things are going to go, and then you don't know how to combine things. And then I doubt we'll get into much low-level optimization because I know very little about that kind of thing. So, but yeah. Also, is there anything I want to fix? So yeah, there is a couple things I want to fix. I'm going to make another function called debug draw, and this is going to be on top of everything. We're not going to clear, and we're not going to flip inside of draw. Let's see. We'll just put these inside of our debug draw. And these are our rectangles, so we'll call debug draw here. It probably needs to take the graphics. Let's look in game.h. We'll add a debug draw. And this is just to separate our debug logic from our other logic. We'll draw our pickups again inside of here. See if this still does the debug drawing. Hey, that's pretty cool. All right, let's get rid of some of these power Doritos. There's never going to be 500 on the screen at once. That's just not going to be the way it is. But at the same time, I think when I was trying it, I'll try it on my laptop and see. I think it has to do with recording. I think it's encoding at the same time as it's recording, so let's see. Ha! None of them are falling through. This is so nice. All right. What else am I going to do? That's probably enough for now. I don't think we need to fill... You know, that's as much cleanup as I want to do for now, to be honest. Just move it all into that debug draw so that we know where it is and we can turn it off and on pretty easily. Actually, let me turn it off for now because I don't want it for next episode. And then let's restore our should play to be true at the beginning. Wrong file. Game should play. And debug draw. Make sure that we don't get the debug draw. And it looks like we don't. So great. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Next episode, what are we going to do? Next episode, this is what people have been asking for a while, and I think it's a really good idea. I'm going to switch to SDL2 because, you know, it's actually pretty easy to set up on Ubuntu. All you got to do is get a PPA or something. So I mean, that was just a problem with Ubuntu like 12.04 or whatever I was using. So I'm going to switch over to SDL2. I don't know. I don't really want to go back through old episodes and mark those up and say anything too much because I think that's just going to be that's going to be a lot of work, and I don't know if I want to get into that. But at the same time, I will make a mention of this video that's coming up and just say like, hey, this is what we're changing. But the reason I'm switching to SDL2 is actually there's actually a practical reason for it. You know, SDL2, I can scale textures, which is great. So I can set we'll be able to set the resolution, and then we'll get some of the benefits of the graphics card. Like right now, I think SDL 1.2 uses the CPU to do all of its rendering, and SDL2 uses the graphics card by default. So it'll be a nice bonus. I mean, if we were going to do SDL 1.2, we'd have to jump into OpenGL and do some of the graphics card stuff ourselves. But, you know, it's just, if we don't have to do that, that's kind of a nice thing. Let's see. So after SDL2, I think we'll move into another enemy. Probably one of the enemies that you can walk on, because I think that's a really interesting challenge. Being able to jump on enemies. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I just hit 1K subscribers, which is really exciting for me. I never thought this was going to turn into anything. I didn't think anyone was going to pay attention to it, so this is really awesome. So thanks for watching, guys, and happy developing.